Jos Mottershed, you've joined us here at the Stallion Stud to go through some of your top tips for stallion handling. I think we've proved today from some of the other footage that it's so important to know what you're doing. So I'm going to hand over to you. What are your top tips?
Well, to start off with, I think one has to look at the whole management package, and it's very important to never lose sight of the fact that a stallion is a stallion second, but he's a horse first. And some people will tend to treat their stallions as though they're different from other horses that they own. Obviously, you have to be aware of the fact they are stallions, so you don't do stupid things like put a mare in heat underneath the nose and expect them to stand there and ignore her.
Right.
But on the other hand, don't isolate the stallion. The stallion is very much a herd animal. And if you start isolating stallions, then you run into all kinds of psychological problems with the stallion, which in turn will become difficult in management for handling.
Mm-hmm.
So remember that they are a horse first and a stallion second. That's a very important starting point. And some of the things specific to handling itself, don't ditz with the stallion. Don't keep picking at him. You should always have a loose line between you and the horse's head collar, unless you're actually asking the stallion to do something or telling him not to.
Mm-hmm.
Don't keep picking at him. Don't keep saying, pay attention, because it's like a 4-year-old child. If you do the same thing with a 4-year-old child, sooner or later they'll just ignore you.
Sure.
And in this instance, the stallion's going to do one of several things. He's going to either go off and do his own thing and you're going with him because he outweighs you, or he's going to get frustrated with you and start turning around and nipping at you, and that's another whole problem you have to deal with at that point. So you've created that problem yourself. So don't ditz with the stallion. Don't allow a stallion to circle.
Mm-hmm.
This is a very, very common error that we see, and it's one that is a classic indicator of a neophyte stallion handler. Somebody that doesn't have full control of their stallion. They're letting the stallion circle round and round and round, and they argue, well, I'm keeping the stallion under control by doing that. No, it's an evasion technique that the stallion is using to avoid having to do what you really want him to do, which is either walk slightly slower or stand still. So don't let the stallion circle. If he starts to circle, step forward with him, raise your hand up, as we saw at one point with Anita and her hand in the air to keep the horse going straight, stop him and back him into position if you were standing still.
And that's just not a point about when you're in the breeding environment, that's just
anytime,
all the time,
anytime.
Yeah.
Yes, you want good behavior from the stallion at all times. So it's not just a breeding situation. When you get into the breeding situation, everything gets ramped up.
Sure.
So that's when you're going to really run into problems. If you've got a stallion that's bad to handle when you're walking from the barn to the field, it's going to be 10 times worse when you go into the breeding shed.
Sure.
So you need to have good behavior at the best of times. So those two things: don't pick at the stallion, don't let the stallion circle. Don't allow the stallion to become dominant. Obviously, you've got to be the active partner in the whole thing, and indeed that circling aspect is an aspect of dominancy. He's basically putting you where he wants you, and sooner or later they'll drop a shoulder into you and move you around as well, so you don't want to have that. There will be a time come that you have to punish a stallion for something, and when that happens, make sure that you can apply the 3-second rule. If you can't punish the horse for what he just did wrong within 3 seconds, don't bother. He's forgotten about it.
Yeah.
And make sure the punishment fits the crime. If it's a very minor infraction, then maybe just growling at him and saying, don't do that, is adequate. Don't go overboard and beat the horse because he just did something terribly minor. On the other hand, if he turns around and tries to attack you, well, at that stage, just growling at him is going to be a little bit of a redundancy. So make sure the punishment fits the crime as well. And I'm certainly not advocating that one should beat the horse on a daily basis. That's not where we're going. That's not necessary. But certainly make sure if it does happen that it's done correctly. Set some rules and parameters for good behavior, and make sure that rule and parameter set is in the same place every single day. Don't change the rules in the middle of the game. That causes a major confusion on the horse's part. It'll also result in some stallions saying, well, last week I was allowed to do this and I'm not being allowed to do it now, but let's see if I can put those set of rules back over to where I was last week. Makes the horse less predictable. And a less predictable horse as a whole, not just stallion, is going to be more difficult to deal and handle with. So make sure that your rules are the same rules every single day. If it was acceptable behavior yesterday, it's acceptable behavior today.
Again, certainly the analogy you used before, same with children, put the boundaries in and stick to them.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. So those are probably the major points that we see as errors or important points for good stallion handling.
Now, not to just promote it in any way, shape or form, but there are courses available and people like you are contactable. So the courses that you run do specifically like give you the guidelines for this, don't they?
Absolutely, yes. We run a course with stallion handling. We have one over here in England periodically, and certainly contacting somebody like Jamie or Anita to deal with some problems can be very, very beneficial as well. They can help you, they can work with you in many instances, and give you some guidelines. If you're out of depth, go and find knowledge where you can get it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, all the information will be on the website and on the end of this video. So meantime, Jos, thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome. Thank you.